Hello, welcome to our third class. This class is about Plato, one of the most important philosophers of all time, arguably the most important. And first thing I'm going to talk about is the background, some theories that are implicit on Plato's arguments, some some thoughts about his writing style, about how he expressed himself, and about the general tone of his theories. The second topic is about the metaphysical existence, about the most important revolution that Plato did to philosophy. The third topic is about the hyperuranium, that is a Platonic concept, is about the world of the ideas and how it is organized. The fourth topic is about the sensitive world, how it was created, how it is organized, and all this stuff. The fifth one is about knowledge. What is knowledge? How we can know things? And what are the types of knowledge? And the last topic of our class is about dialectic, art, and love. These are all possible ways of comprehending things. So, yeah, let's start. First, we're going to talk about the background. The written, uh, Plato has written and non-written theories. The non-written theories are very hard to understand because all we have are notes from Plato's classes that the students took, and Plato didn't like these notes. That he openly said that they were not supposed to write what he was saying because Plato said that these theories were like too big for being written. These theories were not capable of being clearly expressed in arguments in as any other book. For him, the concernings about the good that I'm going to talk about later, the thoughts about the good were too big and too speculative to be explained in words, in like in formal books. His writing style is very vague and very hard and very complex because Plato uses lots of analogies. Plato lets a lot of things implicit, as we have the Socratic dialogues to express his thoughts. It's similar to when someone that is vegan says that, oh, why do you love one animal and thinks it's okay to kill the other animal? It's not like a really an actual question. It's an ironic question. It's a Socratic question, and Plato uses that types of things in the Socratic dialogues a lot. So, like, these dialogues and these assumptions let a lot of things to the reader to create. And sometimes the readers can create different theories about Plato, so that's why sources about Plato are hard to to have and are not very trustful. But in this case, it is because, as we saw in the class zero, the author of the book that I'm using as a base is like a scholar on Plato. He studies a lot of Plato. He is very respected in this area, so I think we can trust it. And then we have this characteristic of Plato that he clarifies the theories of other philosopher, that is Socrates, because Socrates, as we know, is were taught to us. Our first professor on Socrates were Plato, so lots of Socratic theories are just clarified when we understand the Plato's theories. And then we have the use of myths. Plato uses myths to represent his theories a lot because he thinks that this mythological uh, approaching to the questions were wider and were more efficient than just the formal argumentation. So he uses a lot of these myths and these analogies to express his thoughts. So by learning Plato, we can face lots of times very vague concepts, and and it can be a little confusing. And that's why I'm talking about this for you to get prepared. Then we have the metaphysical existence. This is probably one of the most important parts of Platonic theories because that's the biggest revolution he did on philosophy. For ancient Greece, we didn't have this idea as we have today, because today we think of an idea as like something inside someone's mind. But by that time, idea were just the form of something. So if a rock is falling and anyone is seeing it, we still have the idea of the rock falling, because the idea of the rock falling is like the speed, is the shape of the rock, is the all these concepts, all these forms, and all these metaphysical characteristics of the rock. And when I talk about metaphysical characteristics, I hope you can understand that it's not like religious characteristics or spiritual, they're just not physical. And then we have the concepts, not objects. And then with this idea, we can now comprehend the metaphysical existence. That is basically this: is that he expands the study of philosophy not just for solid stuff and physical things, but to ideas, but to understand the form, to understand the concept that is inside this object. Because for Greece, concepts are not on our minds when we see something, but are on this something, is a characteristic of that something. And then we have the example of beauty that for me is very clarifying. We have a canvas, and this canvas is just an object. And then we have a beautiful person. This other beautiful person is just an object. And these two things are beautiful: the Mona Lisa and the beautiful person. But it's very strange and it's very gross to say that these objects created the idea of beauty. Like, these physical objects created their own form, because the idea here is not the thing that is on our minds, is the form. So they didn't create its own beauty. The beauty is something that they express. The beauty is something that is in them, but it's something bigger than them. And that's why lots of things can be beautiful. And that's why beauty never changes. Beauty is always beauty. A beautiful person can get old and can get ugly, but beauty is still the same. So all the physical things can change, but the concepts that they are made of does not change. The things stop being that concept, but that concept never stops being that concept. And that's why Plato says that the ideas are pure, are eternal, are static, and perfect. They are static because they never change. They are eternal because they never change. There's no time for them. They are on eternal present. And they are pure because they do not depend on anything, does not depend on the physical stuff. And that's the metaphysical existence. That's the bigger change that Plato do on philosophy. And these ideas, the the group of all these ideas are the hyperuranium. Hyperuranium means everything that is beyond physical world, everything that is like beyond the skies or something like that. And it's also called ideal world, but I think hyperuranium is a cooler name. And it's the name that Plato uses the most. The ideas follow an organized hierarchy. If you have the idea of black, the idea of green, and the idea of blue, all of them are part of the idea of color. And the idea of color is a part of the idea of sight. And the idea of sight is a part of the idea of sensitive. And the idea of sensitive is a part of the idea of feel. And then you go, and these ideas follow in this organized hierarchy where color is higher on the hierarchy than blue, because blue is just a part of that. So color is like a better idea. And the highest place on the hierarchy is for the good, or one. You can call it both ways. And the second highest place is the idea of dyad. And let me explain how these two ideas create all the other ideas. The dyad is the undeterminate dyad of big and small, of a lot and a little. And this infinite undetermination of quantity is determined by one, because everything is one. Everything is just one thing. So everything has its identity. Even the dyad is just one thing. And everything is based on all these characteristics, this infinite big and small. So if we get the idea of honesty, honesty is a lot something, is like a lot uh, good and very little bad. As an example, as a very gross example. And these vary in littles can change and can be determined to create all other stuff, and then all other ideas. And the dyad is this matter, is this material that the good uses, the one uses to define. So the one determines the dyad. The one, by being the thing that determines the dyad, creates everything. And dyad adds plurality to the plurality to the one. And why does Plato considers the one good? Why this name? That's the part of the non-written theories. So it's very complicated to say. We don't have good registers on that. The one is considered good because the one is the highest thing on the hierarchy. So it's the most existing thing. Sensitive stuff exists just a little bit because they can change. Uh, they can die and born. The ideas exists more because they are eternal, because they are more static. And the one being having all the hyperuranium on itself exists the most. And existing is good. Being the thing that organizes all other things is considered by Plato something good, you know? And that's why he calls the one the good, because goodness is what creates everything. Goodness is what moves action, and goodness is what make order. Here we can clarify it with the Socratic concept that anyone does a bad thing knowing it is bad. And that's kind of what makes Plato think that the one is good, because the one is existing. And for me to make something, I need to think that this something is good. Goodness has this very intense relation with existing. If something exists, you can suppose that someone thought that this was good. And that's why, religions think that everything is made by God, because they think, oh, if it is happening, it's because someone is making it. It's because someone thinks it is good and thinks it had to happen. And that's the relation between good and between the hyperuranium. That's why the hyperuranium has good as the highest place in the hierarchy. I hope I could be clear on that, even it it's not clear for me too, but I hope you could understand the general idea, and that's good for me. Then Plato considers mathematical concepts the last on the hierarchy, the base of the pyramid, because of his presence on matter. Like mathematical concepts are constant, all the time present in matter. As an example, this book, I can say that it expresses the idea of a rectangle. I can say that this pages expresses the idea of 385. This pages clearly can express that idea, and it's very easy to find things on matter that expresses these ideas. But when you're talking about uh, ideas that are not from math, it gets really harder. You can think fast on something that represents justice, because these things have less contact with the sensitive world. And talking about the sensitive world, here it is. The sensitive world is based on the Cora. What is the Cora? Cora is an idea on the hyperuranium that is the idea of sensitive. And this sensitive part of the hyperuranium is what is going to be the uh, sensitive world. And this sensitive world is based on this concept of sensitive, and it is defined by the hyperuranium. It is organized by the hyperuranium and by its concepts. So, like, we had a chaotic sensitive substance, and this chaotic, infinite, undeterminate sensitive substance is determined by the hyperuranium order. And here on sensitive world, we have sensitive substance organized in hyperuranium concepts. It's very similar to the process that the good and the dyad do to create the hyperuranium. And that's why sensitive world is similar to the ideal world, because it is created by the same way, by the same method. But in the first case, the one is perfect, the one is absolute, and the one can, with his freedom, create and define everything. But in this case, we do not have this omnipotential being. So the connection between the Korra and the rest of the hyperuranium is made by the demiurge, and the demiurge do it because he thinks it's good. So thinking that order is good and thinking that the order is better than the chaos because that's what exists. The order exists instead of the chaos. Even in the hyperuranium and in the sensitive world, the demiurge relates the hyperuranium and the Korra to make the sensitive world in the best way that he can. Because the sensitive world is not capable of perfectly representing all the hyperuranium because there are the hyperuranium is something higher than the Korra. The Korra is just one idea from the hyperuranium. It cannot represent all of them, but the sensitive world tries to represent it. And the sensitive world is quite good at representing math ideas, as an example, but he's not good at representing ideas such as the diet. The diet seems confusing. The diet seems almost uh, impossible to understand. And the Korra is determined by the demiurge following the good, so like doing it because of its goodness. And Plato considers the demiurge in the same way that like we consider God. Plato has these two gods, like the good, that is the goddess god from the hyperuranium, and we have the demiurge, that is the intelligence who orders the physical world. And that's why every time you grab something and put it in the air, it follows, because this is the order that the demiurge put in the sensitive world. The world has a soul, that is the demiurge soul, the this intelligence that is guiding the world. The world is eternal since it is based on the Korra, that is an idea from the hyperuranium. So the world is eternal, but their parts are not eternal, and that's why it changes. That's why it's not precise. That's why it's not pure, and that's why it is not perfect, because its parts are not eternal. Its parts are uh, can change, and that's why there is time in the world. In the hyperuranium, there is no time. The hyperuranium lives in the constant present. It is eternal, and it is the best one possible. Demiurge creates the sensitive world basing on the good. So the world is the best one that it can be, but it cannot be as good as the hyperuranium because it has its limitations. Matter is not perfectly capable of representing the ideas. Then we have the Plato's conception about knowledge, which is anamnesis. Anamnesis means remembering. Plato says that everything that we know, we already knew before. Everything we get to know, we already knew before. Because it is impossible to know something that you have never had contact with. You can just know something by knowing something. So that this is one reason for Plato to say that we can just know something that we have already knew, and then we have contact with this again, and then we remember it. But the real argument is the third one. The second argument is mystic. It is a religious explanation. Plato says that the soul is immortal, and for Plato, since the soul is immortal, he have already saw everything, and the soul has an ideal nature. The soul comes from the hyperuranium. we're going to talk about this on our next class, on our fourth class, where we're going to talk about the second part of Plato's theory. But in general, what we need to know is that the soul has this uh, metaphysical nature. And being immortal, it have already saw everything, it already knows everything, and then that's why we already know everything, we just remember it. And at last, we have the rational proof of this theory. That is, because we can learn stuff without anyone telling us. We can discover new things. And that's what Plato cannot understand. Because, not cannot understand, that's what Plato considers the proof that we already know everything. Because we cannot create ideas. How are we going to create something that is more perfect than us? How are we going to create something that is eternal, something that is pure? If we're not pure, we are not eternal. So we cannot create an idea. These ideas were already on us, and we just remembered it because we anything uh, that is uh, that is not us showed it for us. So anyone told me this something, and then I discovered it just for myself with my thoughts. And this phenomenon just means, well, even without anyone telling you, you have already and this concept on your mind. And that's how we know. And we have some categories of knowledge. We have doxa, which divides in acacia, aikicia, pieces, and then we have episteme, which divides in dianoia, noesis. Doxa is about everything related to sensitive world. So everything we know that are about sensitive world is doxa. And these things are opinions. They are never precise. You never actually truly know something about the sensitive world because sensitive world is always changing. Sensitive world is not precise. So it's impossible to have knowledge about that. If I say, "Oh, it is hot," this is not, you cannot judge if it is true or if it is false because everything is changing all the time. Maybe it is hot is truth now, but it's not truth 2 hours ago, or 2 hours in the future. It will not be truth. So we can never have like epi, episteme on these things. And the other way, the other group is episteme, which means our conceptions about ideas. So when I say uh, the shortest path between two dots is a straight line, this is truth. This is knowledge because it's about ideas. And if I have a philosophical theory, this is truth. This is knowledge because it is just about pure ideas, which are static. So if it does not change, we can have precise conceptions about it. And in doxa, we have ikitia and pieces, which means when we are talking about the image of something and then the actual something. As an example, if I say that the sun is smaller than Earth, it's not just doxa, but ikitia too, because even on material, on sensitive world, this is wrong. This is just how it seemed to be. It seems that the sun is smaller than Earth, but actually it's not. If I say that the sun is bigger than Earth, now I'm talking about material things. I'm talking about how this material world is. Maybe the sun becomes a black hole and it gets smaller than Earth, and then it's not a precise uh, knowledge, even being pieces. Now on episteme, we have dianoia, which is about math and geometry, as if I say that a sphere with a bigger volume, with a sphere such as sun is bigger than a sphere in the same size of Earth. Now I'm talking about an idea, and now I'm talking about something that is sure, that is knowledge, that is true knowledge, that is episteme. Because in a sphere in the same with the same size as the sun will always be bigger than a sphere with the same size as the Earth as it is right now, because these ideas does not change. The only thing that can change is Earth and sun. And at last we have noesis, which which are pure ideas. They are not related with math or geometry. And these ideas are the philosophical ideas. Just philosophers have contact with this. Now we're talking about justice, we're talking about good, we're talking about being, we're talking about these philosophical concepts that are purely theoretical, but also not mathematical. At last, we have Plato's concernings about dialectic, art, and love. Dialectic is the intellectual procedure of comprehension. It can be both gathering ideas to discover wider ideas, to discover ideas higher on the hierarchy of ideas, or applying these higher ideas on uh, smaller concepts. The first one, you are discovering higher higher ideas on the hierarchy, and the other one you already know the wider ideas and you're just putting it on a situation. So that's dialectic. Dialectic is this movement that we can do between the ideal world and the physical world, and that is also this movement that we can do inside the ideal world to comprehend the highest idea until good, and to comprehend the smallest ideas until math and geometry. Then we have Plato's conception about art. Art for Plato is the imitation of an imitation, because the sensitive world is imitating the ideal world, and the art is imitating the sensitive world. It means that it's like 3 times further from truth than philosophy. So art for Plato is something bad. It's something that is taking you out from the world. It's Since it is further from good, like as I explained before, existing is the same as good. So being further from existing, being further from the hyperuranium means being further from good, because good is the origin of the hyperuranium. And art is also emotional, so it affects people on material perspective. So arts are arts are emotional in the way that an artist is guided by its emotions to do art, and someone that is the public is also uh, getting feeling lots of emotions while having contact with art. So it is like making them further from their souls, because for Plato, the soul is our rational part. Our emotional part is it's also the soul, but it's not the best part of the soul. It's a part of the soul that is worse on the hierarchy of our soul. I'm going to explain it later, but emotions are more similar to matter than the rationality. And something that makes you less rational is bad for Plato. At last, we have love. This is one of the most interesting parts of Plato, in my opinion, because love is the desire for beautiful things. That's how Plato defines love. Love is the desire within, the thing that moves us to beautiful things. And beautiful, the things that we call beautiful, is the same things that are from the hyperuranium. When we have contact with a sensitive thing, with something in the sensitive world that represents a wider amount of ideas or ideas higher in the hierarchy of the hyperuranium, we call it beautiful. So why do we call someone beautiful? We call someone beautiful because he or she has uh, some harmony on their faces, like proportion, mathematical concept that their faces express. And that's why we call some very intelligent formula beautiful, or various things beautiful, because we can these things can express lots of ideas. And our desire to have contact with this is love, because our soul is from the hyperuranium. So our soul, due to its ideal nature, our soul wants good. Our soul wants the hyperuranium. And then we can come back to Socrates' conception of that anyone do the bad thing knowing it is the bad thing, because anyone is wants good, because our soul is from the hyperuranium, and the hyperuranium is based on the good. And then we always want what we see that are related to the hyperuranium, and this is love. And there are three stages of love: the physical love, that is the love for some object that we consider beautiful, that can express hyperuranium. And that's why we want to have sex with people that we consider beautiful, because we want to create another being that expresses the same harmony. That's why Plato says that we want to have sex when we are in this stage of love, the physical desire. Then we have love for our soul, because the soul can express uh, a lot more concepts. The soul has the ideal nature, so we can love another soul too. Now we don't just desire the physical, the body, but the person too. And then we have the love for the good, the love for God, the love for knowledge, the love for the hyperuranium on itself. That is the highest stage of love. And this is the beginning of Plato's theory. We are going to have another class on Plato talking about politics, about his conceptions on man. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope I can see you on the next class.